Plaquemine Parish Council, as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemine Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District, is now called to order. We have roll call. The machines are open. Let the record reflect that 6 council members present, Mr. John Bartholomew, Mr. Roussel, and Mr. Konovich are absent. We'll lead off with the prayer by Mr. Blank, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led off by Dr. Gui. Everyone rise, please.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom. And we pray for peace to prevail in the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I have a comment from Councilmember Konovich. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the meeting today due to him attending the 98 Louisiana Police Jury meeting. Also, a memo from Mr. Roussel. Unfortunately, I will not be in attendance for today's meeting due to my attending the 98 Louisiana Police Jury meeting. As a member of the Police Jury Resolution Committee, we are preparing for the upcoming Louisiana legislature session. We'll move to the next item, please.
Agenda item 2, executive session. There are none. 3, status report by the executive port director.
Good afternoon, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for reporting period of 25 February to 9 March. During this time frame, I attended the annual TPM conference last week, accompanied by several members of the AP Moeller terminals. This conference was the first in 3 years due to COVID-19, and we gave presentations to many well-known BCOs with an in-depth follow-up scheduled for the next 3 weeks. The TPM conference is a conference where all the shippers and BCOs meet on an annual basis. I accompanied our developer, Chris Fetters, and members of the AP Moeller Terminal to New York City to present our container terminal project to several large investment firms. The interest in our project is way beyond simple fascination, as the firms are well into their due diligence on our project. I think it is very safe to say we will have many investment firms competing for the terminal project, and more on this in Chris's presentation to follow. Our staff attended the annual Ports Association of Louisiana this week, as we were one of the main sponsors of the event. It was very well attended, and it too has not convened for the last 2 years. I gave a container terminal update to the Soy Transportation Group, who were holding their annual conference in New Orleans this week. The Soy Transportation Group is comprised of the 13 soy-producing states, and they were one of the first largest supporters of the PPHTD APH Inland Waterway Network we formed for the last 5 years. I would like to extend a very special thank you to Joel Horton and all the ferry staff that operated the extended hours on Sunday to support the Family Gras celebration on the East Bank. The Family Gras was a huge success, and the port and the ferry department were proud to be able to assist them. Mr. Vice Chairman, prior to calling on Chris Fetters to provide a rail mainline extension update, I would like to recognize a very distinguished and important port employee who in December retired from the port after 35 years. Donald, if you and your family would come forward, please. That's good. Donald began his career at the port in September of 1996 as a deckhand. So Donald started at the bottom. He was quickly promoted to rescue engineer, followed by rescue captain. After several years, due to his leadership, Donald was promoted to marine inspector and then as marine inspector supervisor. It was obvious he was destined for bigger things and was quickly promoted to relief captain. Donald's last position at the port was director of port security and vessels. So he had made it all the way from a deckhand to a director level. During his tenure, Donald oversaw over $10 million in port security funds. He was very instrumental during periods of emergency, particularly during hurricanes. And I got to tell the story that Donald was always calling me up during Ida and asking permission to do this and do that. I said, Donald, you're the man on the ground. You know what to do. Make the decision. And he did. And I think everyone up there, probably a lot of you out in there, probably saw Donald everywhere during Hurricane Ida. So his leadership was just irreplaceable. He served as a member of the Infra Guard, which is a combination of civilian and FBI personnel, in order to bridge the gap between the communities and the FBI. He is a state police fusion officer and a member of the Area Maritime Security Council, and served as the facility security officer for the port. Donald was also the port's representative in the Maritime Operations Security Center, known as the MSOC. Donald served and continues to serve as a volunteer fire chief for District 3 in, say again? 3, okay. And is a present commissioner for the fire department. Lastly, Donald achieved the rank of Eagle Scout, which is a huge indicator of leadership and commitment. He is married to his wife, Dana, who is with us today for over 40 years. They have 3 children, Travis, Amber, who is here with us, and Dylan, and grandparents of Zane and Dax are also here. And his mom is here with us too, Poppy. So Donald, I can never thank you enough for your commitment to the port and our community. Thank you for your service. Come see us often. And we also have if I can get the port staff to come up and the commissioners, we're going to get a picture taken. I would like to read this for everyone to hear, and these words just don't measure up to what all this guy's done for this community and for the port. In recognition, Donald, of 35 years of dedicated service, You exemplified our values of honesty, teamwork, and maintain a steadfast commitment. We will miss you, your friends and colleagues, and we will miss your family too. Likewise.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I'm just trying to find where you confiscated that gun. But I saw you. Yeah. I saw you were wrong. I said,
Mr. Vice Chairman, at this time, Chris Fetters, the port developer, will give an update on the mainline rail extension.
And before he do, I would like to thank Mr. Dorr for everything that he did for our community and the port of Plaquemine Parish. Anybody else at the table would like to say anything?
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Sanders,
Yes, sir.
if people are leaving you like a late flight, you had Paul Matthews done left you, now Mr. Dorr is leaving you. What is going on?
I'd like to hear that.
Are you working them? Are you working them too hard or what?
My wife still loves me.
Okay, Mr. Fetters.
And if I may, Mr. LaFrance, well done, because you made him speechless, so that was, that doesn't happen very often. Good to go? Good afternoon, everyone. And Donald, congratulations. Well deserved. My name is Chris Fetters with Louisiana 23 Development Company. Here to give my monthly update. These are now starting to show a lot of progress. Again, anything that I do present here, probably by tomorrow morning, I will send an email out to the entire board so that it can be distributed as needed. So here follows my monthly update on the mainline extension project. This is the project that was begun third quarter of last year to allow connection of the current service down to the main maritime campus that we all talk about for the overall port development. Within this update, we've got some pretty big milestones that have been accomplished. We're wrapping up what we would call our phase one of the work and beginning to head into phase two. Before I get started, I do want to recognize and thank both Sam Matheny and Shane David. Sam is with Volker, Shane is with SP for joining me today. I appreciate it. I think it means a lot when they start to come out and join us as well. So I won't read the table of contents to you, but as you can see, we've rolled ourselves through quite a bit of the advancements in this first quarter of 2022. So as we've moved forward, our objectives, as you know, were to achieve roughly about a 10% design of the overall main line. There have obviously been a number of questions and concerns that have been raised. We're very thankful for the input that we've had, and those have gone into the status of the project where it is. Currently to date, we did have to make an adjustment, as we mentioned last time. We had scheduled for HDR, which is a very well-renowned engineering company, to join us and be an engineer of record for the rail design, excuse me. There was a conflict that came about in January. The team quickly pivoted and brought online WSP, which again is another we're very thankful for them, very well-renowned rail and infrastructure and port development company. They were onboarded in this last period and contract was executed for them to provide the actual design services so that we can complete this and move on to the next phase. In addition to that, one of the other key components was we need to go through what's called a Surface Transportation Board application process. In consultation with a number of firms, we identified 3 legal counsel firms that were interviewed by my staff as well as by my legal counsel at Taylor Porter. And very quickly we were able to narrow in and identify Venable out of Washington, D.C. They have accomplished this STB application process for a number of projects. including some recent ones for the New Orleans and Gulf Coast out west. So they came very highly recommended, and the overall team is very comfortable with them, and we're happy to have them on board and operating now with their application process going forward here in this next week. As we met with the chair and the vice chair over the last month, we have identified an area that has been brought to your attention in some of our memorandum updates. We are looking at an advanced funds request that would typically be within the construction phase of the project. And really what that's around is it has nothing to do with a scope change, but other than a timing issue. There are some construction items, mainly the signal crossing equipment, that have been identified with the current supply chain issue to be a longer lead time than the original schedule would allow. So that justification has been brought forth by Volkert, and if there are any other questions by the board or by anyone about what those specific items are and those costs, we'll be happy to address those and send those back to additional information to the board. Beyond that, really the next biggest thing that occurred was we had to coordinate and schedule a meeting between ourselves and the New Orleans Gulf Coast and the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority. This does impact our project, but we've known it would impact our project. However, it does not fall necessarily within the scope of this, of the mainline extension that's been funded by SP. Specifically what that is regarding the rail crossing as the diversion project moves forward. And so the NOGC takes lead on that because under their authority, no one is allowed to sever the national network line. And so we participated as a development group looking at the main line below that to understand what timing may be impacted for crossings that would be designed and constructed between CPRA and the New Orleans and Gulf Coast at that headline just north of Ironton, south of P66. So that is underway. It was a conversation I think that was very fruitful, and I would think Bob Bach and the folks at CPRA, it was very cooperative, and I think we'll find a very quick path to whatever the resolution is going to be. Beyond that, the detail in here were some questions that were identified in some of our recent meetings with Port Board members regarding the engineering and permitting services. What do the phases look like? What is the timing of those, and what is that level of effort? I apologize again, the text appears small, but I will forward this out for everyone to take a look at. This rolls us through the phases of development and getting the asset completed and what that looks like. And some of the really the deliverables that will be due that would be reviewed by the board or any other party as we go into like a public comment period, and some of that information for those that would be interested. This is a little bit more about Venable. Again, I kind of covered this in the opening with it. I'll try to work through this rather quickly. Their main focus is not legal as far as advisory on anything other than the Surface Transportation Board. Our objective here is to receive what's called a FONSI, which is a finding of no significant impact. That's from STB and the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, which would allow the project to be designated within the national network. This is a very straightforward process, but it does require the appropriate team members to work it through. The budget and the effort was identified in the original scoping that went to SP for this funding, so this is what we expected in the overall project deliverable. This is a summary that you guys will be able to have for your records of the critical tasks of this phase one that we have been working on for the last couple of months. Obviously, you've got the conceptual planning and research that kind of looked at what the alignment went through. These were the desktop studies, pre-feasibility studies that allowed us to get to the drawings that we provided last time, as well as those will be a working copy that we will advance as we go into the next phase. This task is considered to be completed, and that information was handed over in February at the last meeting. Task 2 was outlining the overall permit matrix and goes through. We have taken the liberty to go ahead over the next couple of slides, and you will see the depth of the permits that are required in order to deliver the overall asset through the design phase. All of this permit matrix has been completed as far as identifying what the critical components are, and then through the phase 2 process of this permit will be completed and all of these documents will be turned in. So the permit matrix design is considered to be complete. Task 3 underneath phase 1 is to perform a property survey. And this is to look at the right-of-way and look at how many different tracts of lands and what those ownership situations look like now. And would there be, what would be the path forward as far as right-of-way? Would it be a simple fee title? Would it be a right-of-way access agreement? So all of that data had to be collected and incorporated into our overall design and our overall planning. This task as well is considered to be completed. And here's a brief rendering. There's obviously a lot of support that goes behind this, but in general, these are the major tracts of lands that we look at that will be impacted or will be a part of the overall process. At this time, these tracts do consider both of the alignments that we have been discussing, especially when we get to the South Campus, whether we stay along LA 23 or we go behind the area. As we've discussed before, we have our preferences. We have had the opportunity to meet with Venture Global. We are engaged with them, and we will be continuing to work with them on evaluation of a safe development of this rail corridor in and around their developed area. So these different polygons up there all represent different land ownership groups. Obviously, the green is the Port Authority, and then you've got the other major tracts that are there in blue. You'll recognize the community of Ironton up in a small orange box, as well as some of the other major landowners down on the southern end of the campus. The final component of Task 1, or Phase 1, is Task 4, which is the completion of the 10% conceptual design. This is really waiting on WSP's final stamp, if you will, now that we've brought them on board. The team at Volkert and a lot of the other supporting consultants developed most of the backup work that goes into that 10% design submittal. This is really the last piece that will be delivered, and most likely will be delivered this month in short order. We consider this to be about 75 to 80% complete, and is really the last outstanding task item. So from a Phase 1 standpoint, we had an estimated budget of just over $3 million, $3.25 million. We have invoiced and used $3.177 million, and so the Phase 1 task has about $72,000 left in it. This is more than enough sufficient funds for delivery of the last 10% design model, and we expect to fully consume and utilize this Phase 1 in a front-end loaded design basis. Real briefly, kind of an overview of Phase 2 is obviously to advance the project into the 30% design. We will be developing and issuing the permit documents themselves. We will be conducting a more invasive topographic survey of the rail alignment regions so that we can understand the topography and the elevation differences and identify any crossings. In addition to that, we will have the geotechnical investigation. There were a number of discussion points earlier this week with some of the port leadership regarding what that would look like, especially as it pertains to Corps of Engineers permits near the levee, if you would have to drive pile over things like a ditch or a waterway crossing. And we know that there are a few small ones of those along the right-of-way. We will begin the right-of-way acquisition during this time. We have had this discussion with the Port Administration. We do believe and recommend this actual acquisition is outside of the budget of the SP investment. It is coming in from a different investment group. However, if the board does consider it, at Sandy's recommendation, we would invite the port to acquire that rail bed. We think that it is within their master plan. If they do not wish to do so, we will proceed forward. So we will allow Sandy to make that introduction to y'all and have that discussion over the next 2 to 3 months and see what that would look like and what the best benefit for the overall project, the port, and the parish are. This task will result in a 30% rail design package, which really gets us into the crux and starts to answer a lot of the other questions that have been posed to us over the last month or so. The estimated budget for this phase is $2.5 million. This has not changed. There is no scope change or budget change from the original proposal that was approved by the board in July of last year, and we would expect to start to project that out in more detail in the coming weeks. One of the other things I'd asked the folks at Volkert to do is start to provide us kind of a look ahead so that you as the board members and the general public can start to anticipate what they should be hearing regarding this project. Those are really the 4 next key deliverable dates to take a look at. And then that way you'll know when we're starting to, you'll be prepared and anticipate when we start to hand over deliverables for your review and what those mean for the overall project schedule. And obviously those are very typical of a 30% design level package. I covered this early in my introduction. Again, the advanced funds request was typically, it should have been allocated into the construction phase. It's for just over $1 million, and there are a number of electronic crossings and switches that have been identified in the conceptual drawings that we'll need regardless of what the final design looks like. These are for locations, such as Ironton Road or the areas around Myrtle Grove, things in that nature. That we'll need in order to be able to bring online so that we can have safe crossing operations. The final location downriver from that will probably need additional components to it as well. But right now we know that these are two items that we're going to have to bring online very quickly. And we would like you guys to consider engaging with SP on what that would look like contractually. And I would, again, invite Sandy and his staff in order to be able to walk through that with you at the appropriate time. Just a couple more things.
Pipe in first.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Everyone knows what COVID has done to supply chains. I ordered a home generator, and when I did, it came in 10 months after I ordered it, and that was 2 days after Ida had hit. So good luck with that. But that's why this advance payment is for these items that we have already seen that they're slow delivery due to COVID. Go ahead.
Thanks, Andy. And again, obviously we know that you guys are going to need sufficient more information. We've provided a basis and justification. If you guys would like to see any more detailed information, we're happy to provide that as well so that you can take true consideration of what it is. It's an equipment purchase. These funds are not being utilized for any services or labor. This is strictly for advance payments on the equipment itself. And then really my last two slides in closing, I'll really go to the map. It really explains everything. In the meeting with CPRA, obviously, once we leave the terminus, there are a couple of alternative routes there in blue and red as we go to work around Ironton. Obviously, our preference is to get to LA 23 as quickly as we can and create as much distance, both for noise and safe operation to the community of Ironton. That then pushes the crossing, as you see there, that green line, back onto the CPRA and the NOGC in order to provide us a serviceable tract as we continue that down. The conversation that was underway is who pays for that, how does it get paid, and who oversees the permit therein. So we are standing by to offer any assistance to either of the groups if it makes sense to expand our permit or engage in any of the design aspects for those potential tie-ins on the red and blue line by that green line that you see. Obviously, one of the biggest things to consider there is when they're doing the construction, that green line is a temporary track, and you'll see that the pitch and angle of the turns is obviously very tight, which means that as it goes around the Ironton community, it's going to have to maintain a very slow pace and velocity through that region. As the final diversion is brought online, the main line will then go back to its original alignment there along the levee, which is kind of that dark hash line that you see as it approaches the river. It makes the turns a little bit more gentle for safe operation, but it's still going to require a slow speed in and around the Ironton area. And I know this is important both, again, for safety and for noise. So that is my last slide on the update. Again, I will provide this in paper copy to all members of the board that it can be emailed out.
Chris had mentioned about the possibility of the port owning the rail beds. I talked to our chairman about this. If we do purchase rail beds, that allows the port to go after the grants, the millions of dollars unprecedented that the federal government is putting out. If we don't own anything, we can't go for those grants. So I'm working with the chairman on that.
Key in, please. Ms. Newberry?
Yeah, can I say something? So if we own it, we have a possibility of getting grant money. If we don't own it, then who will own it? SP, the private entity? So does it?
Well, SP will own the track. We're talking about the rail bed itself, the land. If we own the land where the track goes on, we are eligible to go for those grants. And then we could charge SP for,
And if we
the
don't,
lease of the land.
and if we don't own it, who's going to own it? SP?
Well,
No, that will have to be part of our investment group with the land acquisition. And we would prefer not to do that, but we will do it if necessary. But we would prefer the port to own it for all the reasons that Mr. Sanders just laid out.
Okay.
yeah, there are millions of dollars out that the feds are putting out in the raise grants. And according to our grant writer, she said, you don't qualify if you don't own anything. No.
Mr. Blank?
Sure. So for folks that are just coming in today, what's going on is a private investment firm is trying to build a railroad from just past the grain terminal to just past Woodland Plantation. It's possible that there's going to be a number of crossings on LA 23. There's not going to be any flyovers, that kind of thing. Mrs. Newberry, I've got a few questions that I hope could be answered. Can you please make sure that this board is well apprised of any sort of public comment period that has to do with anything the Federal Rail Administration or the Surface Transportation Board? We need to know about those as soon as you do.
Sure. I mean, we've now really started to engage almost on a weekly basis with the chair and the vice chair when Mr. Sanders and I are both in town, and I either come in either remotely or in person. And those are the topics, Mr. Blank, that are always addressed so that our progress is being monitored.
And so, I mean, we don't really have any sort of accountability with you because you're a third party. We're not going to own this rail line, this asset, so to speak. This is going to be owned by other people. It's not going to be owned by Plaquemines Parish government. It's not going to be owned by Plaquemines Parish Port. Is that true, Mr. Fetters?
That is correct.
That's okay.
The ownership structure will be by SP. Yes, sir.
Okay. I've been well aware of this for a very long time. Anyway, and this might be better suited for a private discussion, but we would like to know what VG's thoughts are on their preferred rail alignment, what the progress is there, those types of things.
Sure.
We haven't really heard anything yet.
Right now.
I could probably share, Mr. Musser was very courteous, very professional as we engaged him on it. He really came in with just a very simple request. They want to participate in the safety evaluation of what the rail alignment will look like and have their inputs, whether it be Riverside or behind it. He offered an opinion that, as he said, is not necessarily the opinion of VG. It was just on the face of it, but he would defer to their participation in a safety evaluation of the rail alignment. But they were not against the rail. He made that very clear. They just insisted that, like all things with their operation or any others, that it be designed to be operated in a very safe and efficient manner.
Thank you. And can you please give us the amount for the advanced funds request?
1.65 million. It'll be in the briefing as well. And I've already asked Volker to provide a little bit more detail on exactly what the equipment is so that you see, because this again is an equipment purchase. And these are the estimates that we've been provided to date.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Fetters. We're looking forward to those public comment periods.
Sure. Any other questions on the rail? Otherwise, I think Sandy's asked me to give a brief update on the terminal and the trip to New York.
Is there any more questions from the table? Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. So on the terminal development, that has been advancing very well in its own course. We have again brought on WSP for that asset as well through our conversations and through the conversations with AP Moeller as well as our customer. They had a working knowledge and a comfort level about WSP's design criteria and experience. We have then engaged them to be engineer of record and represent as the owner of the project, what the technical proficiency of the terminal will be through the design. In addition, on February the 28th, my team released a request for proposals to 3 shortlisted EPC contractors. Those bids are expected to be, they're due back at the end of March. We will be making most likely a selection somewhere around the 1st of May for phase 1 of the terminal to go online. So that project is proceeding forward nicely. AP Moeller has been very actively engaged at every step along the way. We are proceeding forward with an operating agreement with them. We have done what I would call our very basic turns of the OA, and we are down last to one, as it always is with the contract. We're down to one last clause of the operating agreement before it goes to the attorneys for finalization. So we are looking forward to that engagement, moving forward in a firm pattern and bringing APM more and more to the table and having them participate in these meetings as well. So I would say that the terminal is progressing forward on its good schedule.
Mrs. Newberry?
And at what point do we bring this to the public?
So once we file once the permits are completed, which should be also this month for application, There is a normal course of regulatory public comment, when it comes to the permits. But if there are, if we need to start setting up workshops or kind of public sessions, if you will, to allow the general public to ask questions of AP Moeller directly, I think Sandy and I are happy to do that with Brian Harold, especially once this next agreement is done. That means that they're secured and final in their lead position in the terminal development. So I would probably say April would be a good time to start those meetings if we would like to. And I think Brian would be very welcome to starting to participate in those.
Okay, thank you. Good idea.
Mr. Blank?
I just don't know how the public can participate in a design of a terminal or have any sort of real say if the permits are nearly ready to be submitted. It doesn't seem like authentic engagement at all.
That's part of the normal process, though. Once the permits are applied for, Mr. Blank, it goes into a 30-day public comment period. And if there's more time that's needed, then the regulatory bodies make that determination to allow any comment that goes in before the permits, which then really heavily weigh in on the design process, are tripped into.
And Mr. Fetters, I mean, I just, completely disagree with you. I'm sorry. I'm elected by my peers to make sure that we keep the quality of life as high as we can here. I can't get railroad bridges built onto LA 23 for this project. So people are going to be wasting their valuable time dealing with these trains, that is going to benefit your organization's private entity that's going to own the rail line. I can't get any kind of traction here, and I'm in an elected position. How is the public going to get any kind of traction with y'all? I have no idea how that's going to happen.
There's normal due process that goes along with it, Mr. Blank.
Which is broken. It is
I can
broken.
only follow the rules that are in front of me.
The public's best wishes never seem to make it. They never seem to rise to the top. People's quality of life in this parish has been severely eroded away, and you're not helping to gain our trust. You're not helping to ease those burdens on us as residents here. We're going to be sitting behind your trains so you can profit. We're going to waste our lives so you can profit.
Mr. Blank, that's an elected official's position, not mine, in order to change regulation. If the regulations are broken, that is for the state or the federal government to change. I can only work within the rules that are given to me. I can't make those changes beyond that.
You could have baked in railroad bridges from the beginning like we asked, but you chose not to.
I haven't chose not to, sir. That's false.
No, so earlier you mentioned that there were going to be a few crossings that you need this $1.65 million for. One of them is at Ironton, another one's at Myrtle Grove, and the other one, as you said, is at, quote, the final location downriver.
Yes.
Right? It's going to cross 23, correct?
No, that's not necessarily determined yet. We've had this discussion multiple times.
Look, you could wordsmith it, you could try and trick people like a used car salesman or something, or you could just be straight up with everybody. And it's going to have to cross. Either you need the money for rail crossings or you don't. You cannot have it both ways. You can't have $1.65 million to buy rail crossing equipment, like you just told everybody, and then say it's not going to cross.
It's not going to cross 23. Those are crossings for Ironton Road and at Myrtle Grove, sir.
Now, anybody that wants to review this later on, you said
Possibly
the final
downriver
location downriver.
Yes.
That's the terminal, right?
It
LA
could also
23 is
be
right
for
there.
The crossing at the IMT terminal, where they need a safe crossing, where it doesn't cross LA 23.
Scott, if you've got some traction with the community, maybe you can get some headway here. Please step up to the microphone and state your name and address, sir.
Mr. Blanky works for me. He was just providing me consult. So I'm trying to do my best to work with the council, and every question that has been asked, when it's asked to be delivered in a paper format, I've done that. If you're having issue with what this looks like, we've explained this multiple times. I'm happy to meet with you offline, walk you through all of these things so that you can gain that comfort. But the statements of trust and things like that, there are regulatory processes that we must follow.
Mr. Fetters, I've tried that. I've tried having meetings with y'all behind the scenes, and my fears are never handled. They're never dealt with in a meaningful way. The things that we're asking for to ease the burden on the general public here never seem to rise to the top. And that is supposed to be the benefit of the Plaquemines Parish Council serving as commissioners on this port. But, some people up here didn't even realize that a private entity was going to own the rail line, and they've been voting on it. So I yield.
So what specifically then would benefit as far as a public discussion?
where we want the rail line to be. What side of the road do we want it on? How many crossings? Are there going to be flyovers? Just the things that we need as a general public to where this isn't a pain.
The maps.
I don't want it to take 2 hours to get to my house from here. Nobody wants to. Nobody wants to be stuck behind a train. This place is already becoming somewhat unlivable. There's major projects under construction all over the place. There's new subdivisions going in all over the place. And it's a burden to sit behind a train. It is. It's good for the economy. It's bad for our personal lives. We've got things to do.
And again, we have not said that we are going to have a crossing at 23 at the terminal. In fact, we have gone on record to say that we need to move LA 23 to keep the rail on the eastern side of the road and to eliminate the potential threat of that for the downriver communities. Where that actual location is, the timing of it, the sequence, yes, during the construction cycle, there may be temporary situations, and those will be identified and provided to the public as that information has been defined so that we're not dealing with multiple draft versions and creating confusion.
Mr. Fetters, my apologies if I'm skeptical. DOTD can't handle the cracks in the road. How are we going to move LA 23? And the area where it's going to be moved at is the lowest place around. It took 3 months to get the water off of it the last time the weather got bad here.
I understand that.
We can't have that.
I understand that.
But you don't have any, there's no accountability with you. You're just a third-party guy. This should be handled through the port. This should be a public rail line to where members of this council and commission have say with this kind of stuff. But we don't have any kind of say. But I yield.
So I'd like to ask then, since we brought this up.
Entertain him, Chris.
Go ahead, Bo.
Oh, hold it.
Okay.
Are you finished, Mr. Blunt?
I am. But the thing is, in the future, when there's an unfavorable situation, I don't want anybody in this parish to say, Richie Blink didn't try to get some stuff done.
Dr. Gouy?
Chris, I want to thank you for keeping me abreast. You have never not answered my questions. You have taken time either through Zoom or personally to address the questions that I've had in regards to safety, in regards to the impacts, because we all know there will be impacts. You've told us about those impacts, and we've discussed those impacts at this table and personally between the two of us. I think the thoroughness of the process is remarkable. And I know we have to follow the process that is laid out in permitting. And it is unfortunate that the public comment comes after the permits are filed, but until a permit is filed, how can the public comment on something that's not being presented as a plan? And it's just the way it is. And I can echo Mr. Blink's frustration with that. But we can't comment on a plan until we have a plan. And the way the process is, you permit, apply for your permit, show your plan, and it goes from there. It's not at the end that the permits can be modified and conditions of the permits can be modified based on the public comment. So I appreciate this. It's exactly what we've been seeing from the beginning, and I look forward to the next phase of the project and the explanations that you'll bring forward. And if you have anybody else that needs to comment on, of your team that needs to comment, I welcome them to make that comment today.
And I appreciate that, Dr. Gouy. And most likely next month we will have some other of our participants as well joining us to give a broader expanse of the different projects, to keep the breadth of information as wide as possible.
Any more questions from the table? Mr. Black? Yeah. Thank you for your report.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Vice Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
Thank you. Mr. Henry?
Give me 1 second, sir. Let me get out your way. Gotta get that thing unplugged.
Hey, Richie, with all due respect, and I respect Mr. Fetters, but hey, I'm dead on your trail, man. I agree with you 100%. We got this bridge here we got to pay $800 million for.
Tried with that, too.
Yeah, see what I'm saying? Look, y'all gonna get the shaft down there, man, but people gonna see it. They can't see it now. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen just like you say it's gonna happen.
Look, Mr. Henry, if the folks that loan money are in the business of loaning money to make money for interest payments, wouldn't they want to loan this government $100 million instead of $50 million to where we could build some railroad overpasses? For the life of me, if y'all want to play the game, why don't you play the game?
Mr. Sanders, that finish your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item, please.
Item 3A, financial report budget to actual. There's none. Item 4, bids and advertisements. There are none. Item 5, introduction of ordinances and resolutions. I have a few for Commissioner LaFrance. The first is a resolution authorizing Menard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, to enter into a design agreement with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New Orleans District, for the design of the Baptiste Colette Bayou Navigation Channel Deepening Project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And the last is for Commissioner LaFrance, an ordinance approving an amendment to an original servitude agreement between Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and Plaquemines Parish Government, and authorizing and directing Menard Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, to execute the amendment whereby certain land owned by the port will be subject to the original servitude, all as more fully described in the amendment, a copy of which is attached, Exhibit A, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. And that is it.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 6A, there is none. 6B is
Will be deferred by Mr. Roussel.
item 7A, there's none. Item 7B is being deferred. Item 8, approval of the February 24th, 2022 regular minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. Bartholomew. Seconded by Mr. Albro. Machines is open. And the measure passes 7-0. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Black. Seconded by Mr. Albro. Machines are open.
Councilmember Newberry?
And the measure passes 7-0. The meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Government as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District has now called to adjourn by 3:50 p.m.